Welcome, Elena, and thanks for speaking a little bit earlier than planned. Where are you calling in from?
From California, from Bay Area.
Okay, well, good morning. Good morning to you. You haven't spoken at a SaaStock events yet. I know these are one of our smaller and one of our sort of newer online editions, but we've been dying to have you on. And I mean, as I say, your CV kind of speaks for itself. What I'll do, rather than give you a glowing eulogy, I'll jump off and let you do an intro and get into your talk. And fingers crossed, if you're showing slides, that it is working. You're not.
I'm not. I'm flying solo without slides today, so we're good to go.
Amazing, good stuff. All right, I'll be back in 10.
Hi, everyone. I want to introduce myself first, and then I'll dive into my topic. My name is Elena Verna. I'm a CMO at Miro, head of marketing there. I'm also an EIR and mentor at Reforge, as well as I do growth advising for multiple B2B bottoms-up companies to help them with the growth mindset and growth motions. So today, I want to talk about how to actually generate pipeline out of a self-serve user base. Bottoms-up motion on companies, especially in B2Bs, has been so hot nowadays. It's all the rage because it drives the low CAC, it introduces the friction point to the entry, it has amazing margins, and it has a very high satisfaction from the users. But at the same time, also the companies struggle with an ability to do both self-serve and enterprise sales businesses at the same time. But first, let's step back and define what bottoms-up motion is. So bottoms-up motion for a B2B company is when you're trying to acquire users first, and then you try to aggregate those accounts to create and generate an enterprise pipeline, so then you can close a very large enterprise deal. There's a couple of caveats that happen as part of this motion. Your self-serve, or the bottoms-up portion of it, acts like a B2C business. I call it B2C in the B, because you're talking to C's within the B, so consumers within businesses, but it's a B2B product. But then at the end of the day, you also want to have a B2B component in it, and that is the enterprise sales. And a lot of companies have moved down into the bottoms-up motion because it's a really fantastic way to grab as much land out there as possible, to displace competitors, and to introduce yourself into a company without having to spend thousands of dollars of reaching that enterprise buyer. But then everybody starts to struggle of how to actually generate pipeline out of it. And the reason for it is what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been thinking about this topic a lot, and I'm still learning myself because this is a fairly new motion in the market, and we're all learning at the same time right now. But I want to talk to you about some of the learnings that I've had over the last couple of months of how to framework around it and how to make sure that you're actually driving and making cohesive decisions of how to generate that pipeline out of your self-serve user base. So you have to... Most of the companies, they have the very well-established B2C to B products, so that's self-serve products, and then they wait for magically hand raisers to generate out of this user base. And a lot of the times you apply nurture tactics, your enterprise nurture tactics to that self-serve user base, and you try to see how much leads that you're actually going to get into the sales. We've done that at many companies that I've even been involved with, and what we're noticing is that you actually, when you look at the hand raiser that is actually generating out of your self-serve user base, they're most of the time not a user. Account is a user, and account has been with you for a couple of months to a couple of years, but the hand raiser that is coming in is not a user. There's a couple of reasons for that's happening. Most of the enterprise buyers in the larger segment companies are not users. So you're talking to users, yet you're trying to sell your enterprise product to buyers. So there's fundamentally disconnect happening of who you're talking to versus what you're asking them to do. And the persona are two different personas. And most importantly too is that we apply more of the general lifecycle strategies that are not necessarily personalized to the behavior that is happening in the self-serve account. Because we think about it as a top-down enterprise nurture. You go and you email and you try to value prop and you try to give them case studies and user stories, and then those tactics usually don't work. Well, I want you to step back and always think about your self-serve user base, if you have that type of business, as something that you actually need to segment to know when you educate and when you actually move into conversion stage to make the account a hand raise. So when you're trying to educate and you're trying to figure out when is my conversion point, think about it in 4 segments. 1, you need to know how big the company is and how many employees it has, because whether or not enterprise buyer is part of your user base is going to be decided by that fact. So if your company is, let's say, 100 or 200 employees or less, your enterprise buyer very might be in your user base. However, if you have 1,000 plus or 5,000 plus employee company in part of your user base, I guarantee you your enterprise buyer is not going to be a user of your product, because they are a lot higher up and you're trying to reach a CISO or CTO or maybe a CPO as a functional leader, and they're just not going to be the actual user of your platform or of your tool. So segment is important because you need to know who is actually needs to receive what message. Number 2 is velocity. It's very important to understand velocity of the account. Velocity can be defined by number of users that is being added to the account. Velocity can be defined by number of actions that are starting to happen in the account. Velocity can be defined of how many people are logging in all of a sudden into the account. But velocity can help you understand when it's the time to actually trigger some sort of communication, or when it's time to go into the conversion motion for the account. The third one is most common one, usage. You start your motion based on the usage. So you qualify your product account, so product qualified account based on usage. Usage is also really great, but at the same time, usage is different by the different type of segment, so or the different type of use case. So make sure that you very carefully look at usage as opposed to defining one size fits all. Then you have feature walls. This is a tricky one. You acquire users as users and you get them to either use the product for free or they upgrade in the self-serve monetization motion. But then there's very infrequently that we actually have enterprise feature walls. But that's important because if you're asking and putting the pressure on your users to generate enterprise sales for you, they have to have something in it for them. But I guarantee you, and I would bet that your enterprise product team is building features for enterprise buyers, not the users. So they're building security features, enterprise integration, some permissions, controls, user management. Guess what? Self-serve users actually don't care about that. So you need to make sure that you have a track in the product and for the enterprise development that actually addresses user triggers so they can encounter feature walls and they have more oomph behind them to go and say, I want enterprise and I want to reach my enterprise buyer and actually get them to submit a sales lead into your sales funnel. So segment, so know who you're talking to. Velocity, when should you intervene? Usage, which is really means in a lot of them, how much are they using it, so you know how likely they are to actually buy your enterprise. And then feature walls. Don't forget about feature walls. Your enterprise feature walls have to be very much visible to users and provide additional value to them. So then if you have your segments and you know my enterprise buyers are part of my user base here, but in the larger segments, they're not. What you can't forget is to actually do ABM still on your self-serve user base. Because even if you enable your user to go and do a sale within the organization to reach that enterprise buyer, you need to make sure that enterprise buyer is brand aware of you. So you need to be in the places where they are already making decisions for a lot of these tools, and to ensure that when the user or your customer comes into them within their organization and says, hey, I want to go and buy this, or can you go and buy this? They say, oh, I've heard about this. And you want this to be already past the brand awareness stage, as opposed to putting the pressure on your user to actually do brand awareness for your enterprise buyer. So go after those directories. Do still analyst relations, even if you don't have the top-down motion, because it becomes crucial for you to actually do it for the enterprise buyers that already have accounts within your user base, as opposed to truly getting enterprise buyers to go and enforce the usage on your users. So First of all, the one I want to take away for you all is make your users your salespeople. So enable them. Just like you think about doing sales enablement for your salespeople, well, in the bottoms-up motion, your users are your sales agents within the organization. Sales enable them. Drive education, conversion events, understand it across the spectrum of segment, velocity, usage, and feature walls. And then you actually will have predictability and sustainable motion in your bottoms up. But don't wait for all of those things to happen automatically, because they don't. And then you get bigger and bigger gap between what is actually your consumer user base versus what is your enterprise user base. And you have really hard time connecting the two and driving two at the same velocity in the same direction. So I think I'm at time. I'm at 10 minutes. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and I gave you a couple of tips to think about how to upsell your self-serve users into enterprise accounts.
Elena, thanks so much. Once again, like so many valuable pieces of information in a very short time there, and a new favorite word for me, auto-magically. Very, very cool. I don't know if there's any questions that we will have for Elena in there, but if people aren't dropping them in the chat, where can they reach you if they have a question about what you've just spoken about, or something else related to growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to connect. Just drop a note that this is SaaStock is where you saw me, and let's talk about anything that piqued your interest.
Amazing, Elena. It looks like Matt is good to go. Fingers crossed, technology and presentations will be working. Great to have you give up your time and speak to the SaaStock community here. We hope it will be the first of many. And I think Matt is just joining us back. So thanks very much, Elena.